In this video, I'm going to talk about what I consider to be one of the most powerful modeling tools in Maya, the extrusion tool. It's actually quite surprising how much you can get done with just the extrusion tool. So let's start by adding a cube into my scene. Let me frame that. And to use the extrusion tool, the first thing I want to do is to select what it is I'm going to extrude. So I'll go to face mode, select a face, and I've got it on my shelf, but if you need to find this under edit mesh, extrude, also control E. And as soon as I do that, I get this manipulator that is specifically for the extrusion tool. As you can see, it is actually a combination of the move tool, the rotate tool, and the scale tool all in one. Which means if I click an arrow, I can move it. If I click one of the boxes, I can scale it. If I click the circle, I get the manipulators for the rotate tool. I can rotate it however I want. Extrude again. If I want to scale it evenly towards the center, as you can see right now, there is the move square right here, but not the scale square. So I'm going to hit extrude again. And in order to get the scale box in the middle of this, I'm going to click one of these boxes, doesn't matter which one. I'm not going to scale it, I'm just going to click it in order to activate the cyan box in the middle. And now I can scale that in. I call this picture framing. And once I've scaled that in, I can hit extrude again, extrude in, scale it, extrude again, however many times as I want. I can also select more than one face at a time. So if I were to select this one and this one, if I extrude those out, I can extrude them both simultaneously. But you'll notice what happens if I start moving them in the Y direction right here. They don't move in the same direction. One goes up, one goes down, the other one goes up. And that's because right now we are using something called the local coordinate system. You'll notice that even though this matches this right here, if I were to select a different face and extrude that one, it no longer matches it. Now the Y is going down, the X is pointing in the Z direction, and the Z is pointing in the X direction. Something has gone terribly wrong here. That's because every single face on this model has its own XYZ coordinate system based on the angle that it is pointing. If I do this one right here, you can see that one's at the XY coordinates in a different direction. And every single time, the blue Z-axis is the one that points out. Doesn't matter what the axis of the entire world is, the global coordinate system, the local, the Z always points directly out, and everything else rotates around which direction this is pointing. And this is based on what in physics class I would have called the right hand rule. Now, if you were to hold out your right hand with your index finger pointing straight forwards, your middle finger pointing to the left, and your thumb pointing up, you create a coordinate system similar to what you'd expect to see in Maya with X, Y, and Z. And depending on which direction you rotate your hand, the rest of these coordinates will move along with it. So how does that matter for an extruded shape? Well, let's say I create this shape right here out of a cube. It looks like a big T-shaped building. In fact, if you look really close in this window right here, you can probably see Beast Boy annoying the heck out of Raven. But let's not worry about that right now. So let's imagine I've been extruding these faces out, and on the left side right here, this is what my coordinates look like on this face right here. These are my local coordinates of this face. If I were to take this coordinate system and flip it all the way around to the other side, I would get something that looks like this, with the Y pointing down, but the Z still pointing out. And that is why when I move up here, this one moves down. So if I want to be able to grab two faces on opposite sides like this, extrude them out, and lift them up, I cannot do that using the local coordinates. I have to use the global coordinates. And to do that, there's a little icon floating to the top right of my manipulators right here. And this is, well, it looks kind of like an on-off button on a computer, but it is meant to be a switch. If I click this, the switch changes, and now I'm using the global coordinate system. The globals are going to match up perfectly with the global coordinate system of my entire world. And now if I lift these up, everything lifts up. This does mean that if I want to rotate these are going to rotate around the center like this, rather than on the face's individual coordinates. So if I undo that, I can just click this again, and that brings me back to here. Now they'll rotate on their individuals, but as you can see, they're not mirrored. But that's okay. There are ways of doing mirrors in Maya that work a lot better than this. Other things to keep track of when you're working with extrusions is that if you were to extrude and pull this out, and then maybe you change your mind and hit Z to undo that, and then you walk away and come back a bit later and extrude again. Well, it looks like nothing's happened at all here. The problem is, what you've actually done is you've created what are called hidden faces. And that's because every time you hit extrude, even if you don't do anything, it still creates faces that ring around the selected face. So I were to grab one of these vertices right here and move this, you can see that there's actually a face in between all these edges right here. So you want to be careful about that. If you ever use the extrude tool and you change your mind, undo until the tool goes away. Otherwise, it's still done it. You have to keep undoing until you haven't hit the button in the first place. Other things to keep in mind about the extrude tool is if I have the entire object selected instead of a face or multiple faces, and I hit the extrude tool, I will extrude every single face. If I pull this out, it is not that I've made this bigger. I have in fact made a copy of everything, and now the original cube is on the inside, and the new face is on the outside. The problem is, what happens a lot is people do this, and then they see nothing happen, and they just leave it alone and realize, oh no, something weird has happened here. What's weird is you've got two sets of faces on every one of these faces. If I double click one of these and move it, now you can see that there's two copies. This can have interesting uses. If I were to create a sphere, and I'm going to look at this from my side view, I'm going to go to face mode and delete half my faces. And I've just got the bottom half of my cube back to perspective. I can see the inside and the outside of this. If I hit my extrude tool now and pull this out just a little bit, I can create a bowl. Now it's just a shell of an object. And a lot of times when I'm modeling and I want to create something that is a thin shell, I generally don't want to have a real thin shell. If I have something that really looks just like this, I can see the inside and the outside of the object. In video games, what happens is, if I go to shading mode, video games use something called backface culling in order to reduce resources used. And now, my object is invisible from the inside. But if I were to create a shell out of this, even if I keep it really, really thin, I have an inside and outside of it. That's a neat use of the extrude tool right there. All right, that's it for today.